up? What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome. How you doing? So they're supposed to be having another press conference. Welcome back. On the screen here. Okay. You got some other feed up in the meantime. So still not caught. Still on the loose. They've been searching. I had a website over. Yeah, they've done all kinds of stuff. They've done these. They had divers, aerial crews. They probably still do. They recovered one of his cell phones, and still being looked for. It's being reported now that he killed, possibly targeted deaf people, and that he had a thing against them. I think these were like his teammates or something. They used to play like in some type of tournament thing, and he felt that these people were talking bad about him behind his back, but his family believes it was like schizophrenia or whatever. He refused to believe it. Supposedly his family is trying to get him help too. I have a good video to play.
On the war, where they're adopting a resolution to protect civilians.
Got a good video we can watch in the meantime. And some information we can go over as well. This was just a really good watch.
Marine bomb technician, also a Fox News contributor. And Joey, good morning to you. I know you've been watching this from afar. I really just want to tap into your perspective on what we're learning from the family. He was hearing voices in his ear apparently over the past 6 months or a year. Apparently he had hearing aids attached to him as well. Made threats against people on his own base over the summer. Spent 2 weeks in a mental hospital. I don't know where he went after that, but it sure seems like the ball was dropped somewhere, Joey. How do you try and piece this together?
Yeah, this is a really tough situation, especially for people like his family who, from what I've read, tried their best to report local law enforcement and report to the Army, hey, this is happening. We need to get him help. Ultimately, it's most tough and tragic for the families of the people that were murdered by this man. Whatever his reasoning or whatever led him there, they're the victims, and obviously we care so much about them. Listen, I served in the military. I spoke to a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force who's with a reserve unit here locally yesterday. There isn't a pipeline of communication from a military unit to local law enforcement when it comes to mental health that's mandated or even common. That might be a problem, it may not. We have a balance here between your constitutional rights as an individual and what's best for the public interest. And as much as I love to advocate for the Second Amendment, I think that is the problem that actually needs to be addressed, rather than how do we limit the rights of law-abiding, sane individuals? How do we pinpoint and acutely attack issues like this? Look at every mass shooter over the last several years. How many weren't suffering from mental health issues? Very, very few. And I think that commonality is really important.
Joey, this was planned.
Yeah, they said that it was a lot of complaints or people trying to warn people like that this guy has a problem and has issues, you know.
And so well. I want to talk about this guy's skill level. If we can pull up this full screen, showing his military record. He was Sergeant First Class, Petroleum Supply Specialist in the Army Reserve. Didn't have any combat deployments, but he received a couple of rewards for his service. You and I, Joey, have been talking about his skill set that he might be using to avert authorities. What does he know? What does he not know that could make this a tougher job for local law enforcement?
Yeah, I really want to push back on the public's perception that this is some Jason Bourne character who had, severe or extensive training in the military to avert police. There's nothing that's been told about him that proves that to be the case. I'm not saying it isn't the case. He could have gone to SEER school. He could have gone to any number of training schools that any soldier has the opportunity to go to if their unit will let him. But knowing what I know about him, he didn't have pre-deployment combat training. He didn't have any type of infantry training. He had very basic skills training to do the job he did. That's what I know for a fact. If he had anything beyond that, they're not saying. And the reason why I bring that up is he lives in Maine. Maine is a wilderness. It's a mostly untamed wilderness that's under snow for a couple of feet for months out of the year. The people up there hunt bear and moose, which are, almost predators. A bear is a predator. The lifestyle of an outdoorsman in Maine is probably more applicable to what this man can do to avert police than any of his Army training. And I'm not belittling or talking down what the Army trains or the Marine Corps or any other service trains, but this belief that because someone served in the military, they have a supernatural ability to avert police and go on the run just simply isn't true. You can learn more, quite frankly, on the internet or in a gun club when it comes to surviving in the wilderness and hunting and being stealthy than you can in basic training. And so I just want to calm people a little bit in thinking that anyone who served in the military might have gone to combat and have PTSD as this super soldier that can wreak havoc. That's simply not true, and it hasn't been proven true by any of the major incidents that's happened in this country. And I really want to make sure people understand that serving, especially as a reservist, you're a citizen soldier. You spend more time in society than you do on base, and you can learn just as much by being an outdoorsman when it comes to this type of situation, and I think that's important for people to understand.
Joey, we were in contact yesterday, and you were calling into question that
Doing like a sound check or something. Let's see. Okay, still waiting on the presser, guys. We've been covering this story mostly on my second channel, so if you're not subscribed to the second channel, make sure you go ahead. I'll put the link in the chat. Let me do that. Put the link in the chat. Oh, second. I think that's the right thing. Yeah, make sure you subscribe up. The press conference is at 5 o'clock. So 5 more minutes, 8 more minutes. A lot of people wondering, speculating, is he dead, deceased? We were doing the stream earlier today too. It's kind of like unclear whether they have this guy's boat or not. It seemed to me like, and I hope maybe they ask at this press conference, like, what's up with the boat? Lady Wise Wolf said red flag laws sound good, but they can easily be abused. Expanded to limit the Second Amendment. Well, I wonder just about that red flag stuff. It's like, where's the line at with that? I feel like we definitely need some stuff in place, but like, I don't know, because somebody, I don't know, they get anxious. Is that going to put them on the list, or like what level of mental health are you talking about? What kind of criteria? Searching. I mean, I still don't know how I feel as like if he's alive or dead. Being that he supposedly left the suicide note for his son, and also they said it was a rant letter. Went on a rant, and also left like a bank account details with that letter to his son. What's going on over here? Something going on over here? Live aerial searches. Let's see if we can get some aerial searches too. There's the press conference. Okay. So we're waiting on that. Second channel in the chat. Second channel in the chat. Oh, thanks. Let me look at some of the other updates too that Nick sent in this group. Last minutes of daylight on second full day of the manhunt for suspected mass murderer Robert Card. No trace of gunman 2 days after the deadliest mass shooting in the U.S. If he killed himself.
Hi. So we're going to do a real quick test. So what that means, I need the cameras, TV guys. You can.
Nope.
You can leave your camera here in your seats, but you need to exit. Well, hold on one second. You need to stand in the hallway while we just do a few technical tests. I apologize for that, but we need to do some technical tests. The hallway for now. Turn your cameras off.
That's interesting. What?
Turn your cameras off.
Kicking the media people
Sorry
out
about that.
for the technical test. Oh,
You all have to
you
vacate.
got to get out. Oh, snap.
My name? Her name? Angie. Oh, Angie.
Because we are transmitting, turning them off is problematic. If we just
Ooh.
put on color bars and do this.
Do what Jimmy says. Down with the cameras, no recording.
All of our transmitters remind them, shut up the camera and cause some technical problems for us.
Oh, they pissed.
Okay, I believe Jimmy. Do what Jimmy says.
VGB, thank you for the membership. Chris Cross, thank you for the 18 months. Says thanks for covering, Mel. Thank you. And Jennifer Cardillo, thank you. Thank you for the super chat. Says thanks for the coverage, Mel. I guess I'll lower this down. Okay.
Media, please exit that door on your right.
Thank you, Jennifer Cardillo. So they kicked him out. I wonder if this is the bit thing they were talking about. Yeah, maybe it's for the victims. Hoax here says if it's for the victims, they got video. Maybe that's what it is. And while they do the tests, maybe they don't want it like aired out before it's ready to go. So I was like, there we go. Give me 1 second. Oh, yeah, I guess we gotta wait. Wish they had sound. What's going on over here? Oh, okay. Maybe they're just patrolling, standing guard. I don't know. He got. Well, look like he's ready to pop. Hmm. All right, I'll keep Live Fox open. Oh, they got the video on there? Oh. We'll stay out of the woods. All right. Some live action.
Do you guys want him in front of the camera or you want to take a shot?
As we then learned, though, he was not inside of the home. I think a lot of people thought maybe he could have been there the entire time, and that's what we thought we were potentially going to see happen, is maybe he was going to be in the home and come out. As we learned, though, he was not. That was just standard search warrant execution of how things go and procedural routine things that go into it. So he was not there. He is still missing. He is still on the run. Hundreds of law enforcement officers, including the FBI, SWAT teams, the elite BORTAC Border Patrol Unit, they're all attempting to locate Card, who is described as armed and dangerous. So we're getting a lot of reaction to this as well. President Biden calling for Congress to ban assault weapons, among other initiatives following this mass shooting. Again, Maine said to be one of the safer states in terms of crime statistics and murder stats that come with it. And a lot of people shaken up that a quiet area has been dealing with this, and even more shaken up that the suspect still has not been located. We've also seen divers in the water. They were active at a site today along a river as the manhunt continues. And we also know that his car was found abandoned near a boat ramp when the shootings happened on Wednesday night. So continuing to work to learn more information, still waiting for this news conference to begin. We're going to leave this up here for just a moment to see if we can get any update on if this is going to start on time. It looks like they're getting ready to get going here. We're just a few minutes past 5 o'clock on the East Coast. So looks like things are about to get started. Let's take this out for you live, raw, and unfiltered as we get ready to hear from officials.
Chairman, can you ask Dave to turn on the mic? Yeah, can you ask Scott or Dave to turn on the mic?
Okay, let's see. Loves to lurk. Love from Maine. Thank you for your respectful and kind coverage. Thank you.
So for the considerations of the 4 deaf victims and the families, we are requesting that the ASL interpreter is in all of the TV frames for language access here in Maine and throughout the United States. They're grieving and have a right to know the latest information in ASL. So thank you for being cognizant of our ASL in your pictures and TV. Thank you. They're grieving.
Don't do that.
And have a right to know the latest information in ASL. So thank you.
Okay, good. We're gonna.
All right, we're still waiting on this to begin here. It looks like it's going to get started any minute now. We're also showing you a live picture overhead, our Skyfox helicopter overhead as the search continues on the water, on land here as many people are just hoping that we might get some new information here into the search. Hundreds of law enforcement members out trying to assist with this. We've also heard from some other major cities, such as New York City, talking about what they've been doing in preparation for any sightings of Robert Card. Law enforcement getting so many tips, obviously following through with many of them. And my mind keeps going back to Danilo Cavalcante, who escaped from a Pennsylvania prison, and the amount of tips, the amount of effort by the community that they put in to try to help law enforcement capture a very dangerous individual. And unfortunately, it did take nearly 2 weeks, but they were able to safely do so. And I'm sure that's a lot of what's going to help law enforcement with this search as well, depending on the community for any tips, information that they might be receiving when it comes to this. Obviously, every day, new developments. Last night, in particular, the search warrant execution that happened at the suspect's home, that was obviously very big. We learned a lot of other information that police had found a cell phone, had found a rifle in his car, a note, among other things. We heard from Kaylee Schuyler, who's been reporting both in Lewiston as well as in Lisbon Falls. So it looks like we're getting officials, though, stepping up here. Let's listen in live. Looks like this is just getting ready to begin here.
All right, thank you very much again for joining us. My name is Mike Soschuk, and I am the Commissioner for the Department of Public Safety. For starters, let me just say, for the consideration of the 4 deaf victims and their family, we are requesting that the ASL interpreter is in all frames for language access here in Maine and the U.S. They are grieving and have a right to know the latest info in ASL. You can see we've changed this a little bit, the kind of the setup from earlier today. And again, as we continue to evolve, right? Lots of podiums, lost our maps. The whole thing was a little bit of a mess earlier, to be quite honest. And our victims in this investigation and the people that are doing the work deserve better than that. So I would also tell you that we're kind of looking for a larger venue as well. The chains here and everything else seems to work. We're going to use some technology for some pictures here right off the bat. So I would say that, again, thank you for joining us. It's been a busy day for our law enforcement officers and our partners around the state. I'm going to give some updates from what we found, but the real primary reason I wanted to bring you back in today was we wanted to really identify the victims and show their pictures. We won't get into family backgrounds and their lineage at all, but we do want to show those pictures, give ages. I would say that the families didn't want hometowns listed. They do certainly deserve and want some privacy around these issues, which makes complete sense. And we're going to start with that component of our information simply because that's why we're here, right? This is about the victims. That's why we do what we do, and that's why we're striving so hard, and that's why you're here, because you care about them as well. So we're going to go ahead and load that behind us here on the screen. And I think Shannon Moss can also put that information out following this. Some specifics here, I would just like to note that the families actually approved these photos, sent these photos in to us. For a lot of different reasons. I think some of them show a little of their character, a little of their relationships, and some other specifics. You'll just see again a picture, a name, an age, and then there's a couple symbols there. And we wanted to be specific enough to what location they ultimately lost their lives at. And again, thank the families for allowing us to even do this. They certainly didn't need to do that. They're working through their own struggles. And rightfully so. So I'm going to start with this and then ask for just a moment of silence before we continue on to our next agenda item. But that top left, as you see it, and that is Ronald G. Morin, 55. And I won't read the venues. You can put that all together yourself. Peyton Brewer Ross, 40 years of age. Joshua A. Seal, 36 years of age. Brian M. McFarland, 41 years of age. Joseph Lawrence Walker, 57. Arthur Fred Strout, 42. Max A. Hathaway, 35. Stephen M. Vozella, 45. Thomas Ryan Conrad, 34. Michael R. Deloria II, 51. Jason Adam Walker, 51. Tricia C. Asselin, 53. William A. Young, 44. Aaron Young, 14, his son. Robert E. Violet, 76, and his wife, Lucille M. Violet, 73. William Frank Brackett, 48 years of age. Keith D. McNair, 64. Just have a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you for that. Truly, truly appreciate it. And we do, again, appreciate that to the family. They did give us those photos. I did not, however, have any of the family members pronounce any of those last names, so certainly no disrespect intended if in any way screwed up the pronunciation. So to move on, I would also like to address the numbers of the victims that I confirmed earlier today with the number 8. And I will tell you that's miscommunication on my part. I was wrong. In talking to our detectives, we had a list for people that had been identified and family members that had been notified. There's also a separate list that involved family advocacy and whether or not they had been plugged into that. So the reality here is that all 18 of those victims, everybody that we listed here today, everybody has been identified and their families have been notified. So we were in contact with them. I would expect some more information later tonight, and I'll definitely talk about it tomorrow morning at 10, reference to Family Information Center, a new location, and some material around that, exactly what services will be available at that particular time. But I definitely wanted to make sure that I correct that mistake from earlier. So several other updates from this morning's briefing. I know that Shannon has sent along the aerial maps that we showed or tried to show here on the board, so you have received those. I also think that we had, and Shannon has corrected this as well, but the Pejebscott boat ramp, the proper name there was the Paper Mills Trail and Miller Park boat launch. The address was correct at 501 Lisbon Street. Pejebscott is a little bit further down the river, apparently, and we certainly like and appreciate everybody working with us to make sure that we had the proper location, the proper terminology for that. And other additional updates, the boat launch search of the river, the Androscoggin, they're still out there right now, and they'll be there as long as they can based on the light. And as we mentioned earlier, we're talking about sonars and grid searches and things of that nature. That's time intensive. It's taken them a while to work through there. They want to make sure they do it right. So we're not going to finish that search this evening. I would be surprised if you ever saw divers in the water overall. But tomorrow we'll have additional dive resources available to us from out of state, as well as some additional in-state teams. So again, we'll discuss that a little bit at 10 o'clock tomorrow. But no surprises. We expect that to go over, and that we'll have some assets there tomorrow. They did a bunch of flyovers this morning, as I mentioned. They did the sonar searches, some side, some ROV, and we'll be back on that tomorrow. The bar scene itself, they continue to do their on-scene investigation there, as well as at the bowling alley. They did check those wood lines. They may be back in there tomorrow as well, but that is progressing as expected. And I think another major piece of updates for you now is to talk about the shelter-in-place order and where that's going effective immediately. And I'm not a big reader of orders, but I think this is important that you hear this directly from a couple different sources. We're going to put out a release. There's going to be a cell phone geofence release to some folks. We've used that a couple times already during the active shooter as a warning and otherwise. But the shelter-in-place order is rescinded, except hunting is prohibited in the towns of Lewiston, Lisbon, Bowdoin, and Monmouth, beginning Saturday, 10/28/24, until further notice. The state police continue to search in Lewiston, Lisbon, Bowdoin, and Monmouth for the suspect, Robert Card, and recommend individuals remain vigilant. Businesses may choose to open or remain closed. Commissioner Camuso from IF&W is here to help us answer any additional questions about that hunting piece. It was asked this morning, and it was a good question, and I told you at that time that we were working on an answer for that. And what that means is that the general shelter in place has been rescinded. Specifically, hunting, again, is prohibited in those 4 towns and those 4 towns only. And it's important that I mention that because the rest of the state is allowed to continue with their resident-only day on Saturday, tomorrow. And what does that mean? That means that there are going to be communities that hear gunshots from time to time because they're going to be hunting. So we would ask everybody to use caution in that and not think that every one of those gunshots is directly regarding this particular crisis situation, this investigation. So clearly, if they think, if they're suspicious, if they're concerned, they can certainly call their local agencies. But I would ask them to think about that, where they're located, when do they hear that? If they're 150 miles north, do they need to call their 911 center and create a response? And I think I would say no to that unless they have another set of facts, a fact pattern that would believe them that there's a direct connection between that gunfire and what they've heard to this point. So we had mentioned why we made that decision initially because of the crisis and the situation that we had. Those 4 towns in particular, clearly with Lewiston and the 2 tragic situations here, the 2 locations we already talked about. And then you have Lisbon with the boat launch, Bowdoin where the suspect lived. In Monmouth, there's other family connections in that particular area as well. So this is not to say that the crisis is over, the emergency is done, we can go about our lives as life is good. We want our folks, we want our residents to remain vigilant and to pay attention to what we share for information. I again focus on what we share is in the Department of Public Safety in the city of Lewiston, because we continue to see a lot of information from a lot of different places that is far from accurate. I would also say in that regard, when we say that we're going to meet you here at 10, we're going to meet you here at 10. And when we say we're going to notify you, we are going to notify you in the afternoon if we're going to get together and what time that is. I just encourage you to believe that until I prove you wrong. And I won't. And I say that because we've heard some other stuff. There's going to be a press conference at 1 o'clock. And then our PIO, who's incredibly busy, gets 100 emails that says, is it going to be 1 o'clock or is it going to be this? And you've got a job to do, I get it. And we're trying to help you do your job. And if you could help us do our job, that would be greatly, greatly appreciated. So that is some of those pieces for updates from what we worked on this morning. A couple of additional things. Neighborhood canvases, as an example, I did not speak to that. So we talked about large deployments of officers in various locations. What would that look like? Neighborhood canvases could be a couple of officers knocking on a door. And that's going to be happening at various locations around this particular area in multiple towns. Again, if somebody's using their own common sense and they say that doesn't seem right, then sure, call. But you could have 2 uniformed officers or 2 officers with clearly displayed badges jumping out of a marked car to come talk to you as detectives. There was a question this morning around arrival times at the 2 locations, and we had done some research on that, which was hot off the presses walking out the door to come here today. So spare time, as we had mentioned earlier, that initial 911 call occurred at 6:56 p.m. And by the CAD system or the computer-aided dispatch system, so somebody calls in on a radio and they says, now I'm out at that location. The first Lewiston officer arrived based on that system at 7 p.m., so 4 minutes later. The reality there, however, is that there were 4 plainclothes police officers that were shooting on the range in that general area. They hear that call come in, and they're walking into the bar and, or rather the bowling alley, in about a minute and a half. So they don't have radios. They weren't in uniform. They hear it as they're at the range. They respond to the address immediately, and then they address the threat and clear the building. For that same location, right, Spare Time, as an example, you have Lewiston. It's a self-contained police department. They work with everybody, so it's not uncommon to see the Maine State Police in town, but they don't have specific areas to patrol. Calls came in to dispatch centers for the Department of Public Safety that would control the Maine State Police, as an example, at 6:57, so a minute-ish later, and we didn't have necessarily troopers right inside the town, so 11 minutes later, our first trooper arrives, which is not uncommon, actually, and that's a pretty good response time, considering it's an urban atmosphere and troopers aren't here. The second set of calls, as we've discussed, came in at 7:08, so this is the bar and grill. And the first Lewiston officer is responding there at 19:13 or 7:13 p.m., so 5 minutes later. And then really it becomes exponential after that, as an example. Should have mentioned this earlier, but Spare Time, a minute after those initial officers respond, 8 more are there. Now we're saying now everybody's starting to roll in at about the same time, and about 10 officers are responding to the bar and grill immediately thereafter. You got the first folks, and then people are just showing up from the police department and other locations. And that particular calls for service for the Maine State Police through Department of Public Safety dispatches, we got that second call at 7:10, about 2 minutes later than the Lewiston Center received it, and we had officers responding and arriving 3 minutes later. So why is that? They're already flying to the first address, and now we got a second call, and now they're diverting to that second call. So it's obviously they're in town, and they're running hard to that location. So those are the arrival times that I was asked about earlier today. I think based on the list that I made this morning, I think that's all we had for information. And I'll just call that kind of updates and follow-ups, things that I knew you were asking. There were some additional questions from the general public, which has been good for us to receive those through these, right? They get a chance to see stuff, and then they reach out and say, what does this mean? We had a bunch of people reach out about that shelter in place, and what does that mean, and what should I do, and what does that look like? And rather than answer those through conversations with city staff, city leadership, police chiefs, we decided to rescind that order again, but recommend that people remain vigilant as they move forward. So I do appreciate them reaching out, and all of that contact has something to do with our ultimate decision. Where do we go from here? So with that in mind, that's the information that I was asked, and the information that I can update. We do have, I believe, the suspect picture up here as another piece. And the reason that we did this is because it's been quite some time. We've seen that photo, and you have a bunch of different photos. This, in fact, has more of the physical description of his height and weight, and his more official hair and eye color. You could guess at that based on some of the photos that you see, but why do that if we can directly give you that information? So if you could freshen up any material that you have there. It does again show that brown hooded sweatshirt and dark colored cargo pants that are in the photo that we had released earlier, which showed him walking in to Spare Time with that firearm. So I think that's the information that I wanted to get out to you today. I appreciate you coming back or holding on. I know you have long days and long nights, so that piece you were going to be around anyway, I'm sure. But I am, again, happy to try to take some questions and answers. The chief is here as well, but we did want to keep this tight from an operational standpoint. So, yes, sir.
Go back to the timeline.
Yeah.
4 officers were at the range, I think, right? So can you just go over that again?
Yeah, sure. So officers are required to qualify a certain number of times a year, right? So in this particular instance, the officers are in plain clothes. They're shooting at a range right around the corner. The call comes in. They hear that, and they're going to respond, which just speaks to when these things happen, everybody's going. You could be a detective, the chief's bailing out of the station, you could be wherever, everybody goes. So being Lewiston officers, they go, we know where that is. Everybody gets in the car and they immediately go to spare time to help in any way they can, not knowing that in fact they're going to be the closest there and the first out. So that cuts almost 2.5 minutes off the original or the initial uniformed police officer's response. And that's not uncommon from a police standpoint. Sometimes you got months where you're thinking, boy, I'm right around the corner when all this stuff happens. And sometimes I'm on the other side of the city when other stuff happens. We're very, very lucky that the officers were that close, because I think you save lives with time responses. And in an urban atmosphere, depending on where everybody is and how busy the night is, that response could have been much longer than that. Yes, sir.
Have there been any credible sightings of the suspect by either law enforcement or the public since the shooting took place?
Yeah, so we have, again, 530 plus tips and leads that have come in. Some of those have been sightings, some of those have been, and I would say as simple as, but hey, I've got a vacant house that's in this location. I own a barn that I'm afraid to go to. There's something over here that concerns me. So those things run the gamut. And I'm also going to use that opportunity that the FBI supervisory agent in charge, Jody Cohen, who has been with us during these press conferences, we gave that digital video information out this morning. There's already well over 100 entries in that system. So that means you're putting that information out, and the general public is grabbing hold of that, wanting to be involved and sending that information in. So I thank you for that, and we certainly thank the FBI for their assistance with that kind of material. So we've got all kinds of, somebody may say,
Has law enforcement seen him in the last 2 days?
We have not. Law enforcement has not seen him in the last 2 days. But again, in that stack of that 500 plus, you may have somebody that says, hey, we see somebody that looks like that. So we have not, but go ahead, ma'am.
Can you confirm that the known found at the suspect's home is a suicide note?
I-
Does that have something to do with lifting the shelter in place?
Yeah, I cannot, and I'm not going to speak to the note itself. I acknowledge the fact that a note existed this morning, but I'm not going to get into exactly what it contained. But, sir?
Sir, you said that the officers, plainclothes officers who responded, addressed the threat, cleared the building. Can you explain what happened there?
Sure. When I say address the threat, they're going in the door addressing an active shooter. So they're going in prepared to do whatever they need to do to make that scene safe. On that particular time, the suspect is no longer there. They're going in as if they were. So the first thing you do is you go in and clear that location, make sure it's safe, and then you start working with victims and triaging people and trying to make sure that you're getting additional units there as fast as possible. So, yes, sir.
I wonder if when the officers arrived at the second scene, the suspect was still there, or whether by the time the first responders had arrived, the suspect had already left. And secondly to that, outside of the area of Lewiston and the surrounding communities, you talk about the work that's going on further afield, and the suspicion that we might have been able to flee a bit further than that, potentially even outside of the state.
Yeah, sure. So the suspect was not at the second location when the officers arrived. As we discussed this morning, we showed those 3 maps as specific areas we knew we were definitely going to be working in. And then we've also cleared other areas that are farther afield. Somebody may again say, there's a barn over there, there's an outbuilding over there, there's some family property that somebody's uncle owns, and can you check that? So as those things come in, some of those are kind of on the checklist to begin with, and then some come in real time. Because as those leads come in, we do look at those and then we farm them back out to either tactical units that are looking on that apprehension side or investigative units that can go out and do additional interviews. Well, at this point, we are cognizant of all possibilities. We're not closing off anything because we want to make sure that we're being as comprehensive as we can with these particular searches. Yes, ma'am?
We noticed earlier there was extensive law enforcement presence in Durham, Maine. What can you tell us about what that was about?
In what town?
Durham.
Okay, yeah. So, and that's a situation where I heard that on the radio. Somebody had reached out to say that somebody may ask that question today. So we did look at that. There was a location there on a street in Durham where there were 2 911 hang-up calls. 911 hang-up calls happen on a regular basis. Depending on where they are, you may go, okay, wait a second. And then we had a second call. And then there was a sheriff's deputy that responded to the scene and then ultimately did not answer their radio, right? So you go 911 hang up, 911 hang up. Okay, wait a second. The officer that responded is not talking. That could be for a lot of different reasons. Again, based on the circumstances, we're certainly concerned about something like that. So officers did respond, make sure that he was safe, the scene was safe, and they moved on. So there was no direct connection to the suspect in this scenario, at least in today's call for service. Yes, sir.
Have you at this point secured or gone to all the residents, every place where he had lived previously? Have you gone to each one of those homes? And additionally, at this point, have you executed all available search warrants? Search warrants at the houses, at his car, social media, electronics. Like, have you put all of those search warrants in, or there's still others?
There's still a lot of work to be done around the search warrant side of the house, just based on workload alone. I don't know, however, have we searched every house that he's had over the last amount of time? Certainly the ones that most recent. There's a Bowdoin connection, which caused a bit of a stir last night. That was a location we were concerned about. Our reality from a homicide investigation, as an example, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you may have done 1 or 2 search warrants. Based on electronic devices and everything else, you could do up to 30 search warrants on 1. So this kind of situation, clearly there's going to be a lot of affidavits, a lot of work to be done around that. So we're working with the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Attorney General's Office. Federal entities are assisting with these warrants. That's an all hands on deck. You just never know, I'm going to open this device and that's going to be the one, right? So we farmed that out to make sure we're making as much progress as possible. And I'm sorry for waiting. Go ahead.
By the end of this week, temperatures are supposed to plunge in the area. How is that going to complicate the search, or are you hoping that it actually might help investigators and be a problem for your suspect?
Yeah, so I think that goes in 2 different directions, right? We certainly have a lot of resources coming from the river tomorrow, because it would be nicer if it's sunnier, you can get a better look into the water. So that's one angle. If it's colder, there's an argument to be made that your thermo style of equipment, where you're looking for body temperatures or heat signatures, may work better in that scenario. So it does definitely vary. If it's cold for the suspect, it's certainly cold for our officers as well, and all those different things. We're certainly prepared and willing to do all those things, but that's where we're at. So yes, sir.
Discuss some of the reasoning behind why you removed the shelter-in-place orders in the 4 towns where you acknowledged you're still actively searching. And secondly, do we know how many weapons Card had or has in his possession?
The second question is no. I don't know how many he has or had. If there are weapons within that residence, that'll be part of the search warrant and counting those things out. And the decision to release that or rescind that shelter-in-place order is something that we've discussed internally as command staff members at the CP, and saying, okay, we're looking at pros and cons, right? We've got communities that are locked down, that are shut down. There are families and schools and pharmacies and all those things. So we knew going in, and have acknowledged that repeatedly, that we know that can have a negative impact on people. So the other side of that is we had very pointed threats early on, reference to these locations, and nothing specific since then. So you have to look at that, and you have to do the math on that and say, so are we more comfortable? Are we doing more harm than good by keeping people away from these clinics and their doctors and in schools? And while this is still absolutely a dangerous situation without question, we've got to make recommendations and ask the people that we serve, ask the people that we protect, to be vigilant, to pay attention, to listen to what we have to say. If you see something, say something. Because in most cases, you're like, I don't like that. That looks strange. We can feel that. Especially when you live in neighborhoods, right? That you live there, you're comfortable with that. That car is wrong coming down my driveway at this particular time of the day. What is going on? So that we don't come to those decisions to go into the order or come out lightly by any stretch of the imagination. But we do appreciate all the input from everybody about what does that mean and how it's impacted me as a person, right? So I appreciate that. Yes, sir.
Commissioner, is there any reason to believe that he may have obtained another vehicle since you already found his car, or may have gotten on the boat and gone down the river?
All possibilities are open to us. I don't have anything specific reference to that particular question. Next steps, where did he go after that, and what was he in or not? Which is why we have feelers out in all directions. Is that a possibility? Sure. Is the river a possibility? Sure. We're going to continue to work those things until we're comfortable that those things have mitigated to the best of our ability, right? Because some of these locations we serve a search warrant on doesn't mean we're done, right? We may actually go back and continue a search and new information and go back and check a location again. So all of those things are absolutely available. Sir, right here.
Are there now 18 murder arrests?
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to. I know that the Attorney General's office told us this afternoon that they were trying to complete the rest of those warrants in a timely fashion. Now that those individuals had been identified and the families notified, I'll have that answer for you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock for sure. And right here, ma'am, sorry.
Yes, thank you. Two questions. The first is whether you can confirm that police found a gun in Card's car, the suspect's car, the one that was discarded.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what communication has been like with law enforcement in on the border states of Canada, New Hampshire, even Massachusetts, and specifically whether or not there's any expectation or any plan to put the border checks in place as a suspect continues to potentially be moving.
Yeah, sure. So we won't speak to evidence, specific evidence. Did you find something here? Did you find something there? I completely understand why the question is valid, but it's not something we're prepared to talk about, certainly this early on in an investigation. I can tell you that I've been in contact with all of our border states or country. New Brunswick reached out to the governor. The commissioners from our border states reached out to me immediately the day of and have reached out to me multiple times since then. Again, a lot of their officers are with us at this point, right? New Hampshire is up here. Massachusetts is up here. You name it on the federal side of the house, they are here. So everybody's really working hard on that side of it. There's no expectation at all that there's going to be some kind of a border checkpoint scenario. But I'm going to take one more call, one more question here from you, ma'am.
Question for the chief.
Oh, absolutely.
Chief, for members of law enforcement, especially for Lewiston, Auburn, and this close-knit community, can you talk about what it's been like to do this investigation when they may have close connections to some of the victims?
It's been very difficult, I can tell you that for certain. Seeing these pictures come up on the board, I know a couple of them myself. There are many law enforcement officials that I know some of these victims, and it's certainly very challenging. Try to go into a situation very objectively and, do a very thorough job knowing that you know this person that it's affected, or, a family member or a friend. Very difficult. I can tell you that all of the police officers I know from the area remain very professional at all times, and we press on and we get the job done. Chief, just quickly, what is it like, if you could provide perspective, processing those scenes, those two scenes where the shootings took place? Some of the complexities, are you dealing with 50, showcasing hundreds? What are just some of the complexities as well? Yeah, again, the state police has the lead on this investigation. I can't comment on that. I can tell you that in scenes that I've investigated personally or that I've been to, it happens a lot. It takes a long time to process these scenes. It's nothing that happens in a quick manner like Mike mentioned earlier this morning. It doesn't happen in an hour and the case is solved. These things take time.
Yeah, the boat.
I'm not prepared to answer that question, but I do appreciate that. And as I mentioned, thank you very much for being here.
Something's up with that boat, man.
That. And we'll continue to strengthen this partnership and get out as much information as we can. So have a nice evening. Thank you. 10 o'clock tomorrow. And it will be here unless we change the venue.
Oh, I got to wake up early tomorrow. I can't sleep.
All right, listening in here to officials give this update.
Been wondering about that boat. And there was some confusion in the chat because people thought that he said there was a 4-year-old victim. They said 40. But the youngest, to my knowledge, is the 14-year-old. The boat thing has me curious. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like if it wasn't missing, then he'd be like, no, it's not missing. You know? I don't know. Where did he take that boat? The other thing, really briefly, I'm not going to go through all this because I have to head out, actually, because I got to take the baby to her mama's. But for those that missed it, just really briefly, and I think that's why they had the how do you say ALS? I think ALC. Maine gunman Robert Carr target deaf friends. Killer had recently been given hearing aids and claimed they let him hear people criticizing him at the bowling alley and bar where he murdered 4 deaf friends and 14 others. All right, this guy's a piece of ish. These are some of the victims right here. And I don't know if they show the 14-year-old in this one, but yeah. All right. So anyway, I'm gonna head out for now. Make sure you guys subscribe to my second channel if you're not done so already. Hit the like, subscribe. You're too late, Mo. It's too late. Like, subscribe, and maybe we'll be back later. All right. I need to go take care of a couple things. I need to finish editing a video, and I don't know. I want to have that video ready for Monday. And then tomorrow they're back at 10 a.m. And Monday, I think a trial starts. I think we're starting a trial Monday. So be ready. I should be telling that to myself. Be ready. And we'll probably be back later. Who knows? So yeah, make sure you subbed to both channels, because in case I run out of notifications on one channel, I might jump on the other one. So, all right. I'll catch you guys.